Welcome. There's always been a huge debate around African spirituality and Christianity. And today we have both of them in studio. We've got Ricky, who stands for Christianity, and Kuluma Hlabahlabane for African spirituality. Welcome. Can you please start by introducing yourself?
Kuluma Hlabahlabane here, musician by profession, best known or known for always debating African spirituality, and you could almost say activist, mostly on TikTok, YouTube also, and yeah, sometimes Facebook.
Welcome. Sure. Thank you.
And I'm Ricky from Church Reality Check. We do Christian commentary videos on the basis of defending the faith from a biblical perspective. You'll find us on Facebook, on YouTube, a bit on TikTok and Twitter. We are coming with articles, and that's what we do on a daily basis, defend the faith.
Welcome, gentlemen. So today we are actually tackling a very thought-provoking topic, which basically is along the lines of, are you talking to God?
Yeah.
And I think it's a debate that has been, everywhere. Each, religion has its way of talking to God, and we're going to really look into that. So I want to start with you, Ricky. How did you come to be a Christian?
By the way, you from Sake of the Truth YouTube channel.
Yeah.
We did a discussion.
Oh, yes.
So for those that didn't see that video,
at Sake of Truth on YouTube, at Sake of Truth ZA on Instagram. You can find me there.
So that's her page. Personally, I remember when I was in high school, there was a period where I had a friend of mine pass by the name of Tsawone. And I think that was a really defining moment for me to understand, wait a minute, there is a reality to this whole thing. And so that's when I really woke up to, you have to really be responsible in how you live and so forth. And a girlfriend by that period got tired of coming to see me on Sundays, and she said, dude, go to church. And when I went, that's how I actually heard the gospel in Benin.
That's incredible. Cool.
Yeah.
How did you come to become, a Sangoma, and even to a point where now you're an activist of the African spirituality?
Okay. Come to. So when I was 16, which was right at the peak of, you can say, me realizing a lot of things that were happening around, that's when I started realizing everything that was happening around me spiritually. But at that time, I was, as a teenager, you'll still look here and there. Some are going to temple, some are going to, and almost tried a few of them. But then it was only after I started having what you would call visions, dreams, and prophecies in English, that I actually realized what I was meant to be. So for me, it wasn't even a become or train. It was me sitting in, to say, the throne that was created, that I was born into.
When did you come to sit on it? Because you're saying the realization started as a teenager. When did you occupy that space?
I occupied that space when I was 16. So that's only after everything that had happened that I accepted my truth and went for my training. So we can say around that time. Yeah.
What convinced you that this is the right way to go?
Convince. I didn't need convincing.
You didn't need that assurance?
Yeah, I did not. I was, as I said, a teenager will question. I mean, you even question your eyes as a teenager. But there was no convincing because I grew up around it, which was very, very important.
You're a family member in it?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm a third generation of it.
So it's been in the family. That's why there was no skepticism around it.
You didn't need to sell it to me. I was already in it. My grandfather, my grandmother, my father, were my lineage, all of it. They were healers, and my grandmother, not particularly a healer. She's on the church side of things. So she will be what you call a seer, and English words, what you would call these prophet and all of that. So it was literally me sitting in what I was born into.
Yeah. That actually brings me to a question that I wanted to ask you, Ricky, in terms of your journey, because you're telling us that it was also because of the reality of death that came around you at the time. But how did you journey from that reality of understanding that, there's this spiritual reality and getting to a point where you actually are convinced that Christianity is actually the way to go for you?
It was doctrine, which it goes back to that thing. It's that by that period, I had in primary been into Catholic teachings and stuff like that, which raised us very well. They gave us really great morals. But it opened me to the dangers of doctrines that are outside. I came to Islam because when they were rebuking Christianity, they were directly rebuking Catholicism. And I was like, okay, so which means Christianity is wrong, but I was only describing Catholicism. And so the conviction was in doctrine. It was literally the teaching that I then saw in Islam that was directly aimed against Christianity. It made me question, wait a minute, the Jesus that's been talked about here, I don't think that's the Jesus that I read about over there in those stories. And so when I went back, looked at those stories again, it gave me assurance to say, I think I was in the right. I was just not properly trained. I didn't hear, by the way, speaking of hearing, we are at Sense Studios. If you guys want to record over here, do be sure to check them out. I'm sure that you'll have a banner up there and stuff like that. And so thank you very much. They set this entire thing up for us. Yeah. I highly appreciate
Definitely
you guys.
Coming here as well next time.
It's a vibe. It's a vibe.
Yeah, it is.
And so that conviction came from doctrine. And the Bible does say, faith cometh by hearing. And so that was my experience coming. That was the conviction point.
I think also, this may be out of the way, but just to ask you guys, in the simplest forms, how would you describe Christianity and how would you describe African spirituality? If in a simplest form, if someone were to say, what does a Christian do? What is a Christian? How would you describe that?
So African spirituality, underlying spirituality, but for me is in the simplest form would be, learning your ways, learning where you need to be. Okay, learning if you don't know of. But it's mostly simple because it is what you are. As an African, you don't need to be taught. You just need to listen. Whether they will say it's not the voice of God or it's unholy or it's demonic, it's really you, me. But African spirituality is just you learning your ways of talking to God. And that's it.
It's incredible.
And for Christianity, it's more, it sounds the same, but it has a distinction. The Bible says we know, the Spirit bears witness with us that we are the sons of God. And so there is an inner conviction where you can feel a rest in thinking. And what does that rest mean? If you wanted to describe Christianity to someone that doesn't know what we're talking about, it's a relationship with God. It's it's the restoration of the relationship with God. The aim of Christianity to begin with was where man has failed, Jesus has come to fulfill. So to restore that relationship back with God.
Okay. Now coming to the core of the issue, right? The issue of talking to God. Now, are you talking to God? Both of you. This question goes to both of you. Are you talking to God? And if you are, how or what assurance do you have that you're actually talking to God? Who's going to start?
Do you want to take that on?
You take it.
Okay. And so I think this is a perfect part for us to have a little bit of a rebuttal.
Yes, please. By all means.
And so what is the assurance? I like the question, the framing of the question to say, are you talking to God and what is your assurance of thinking? The Bible describes life the best way possible to prepare you. It's not trying to make it comfortable. And for me, African spirituality seeks to make people comfortable. If your situation is not fitting, let's go over here and wash you up and get you in right so that things will go nice. Christianity is not there to do that. Christianity is telling you the reality of where you are. You are in a fallen world, you're sick. This is where you are. You are facing something that was heartbreaking. Someone did you evil. This is the fallen world where you are. This is the consequences of what happened when we had the fall. And so that's what I love about Christianity, is that it approaches life from a realistic perspective. Like, for example, I'll give you an example before we hear Mukulu's address on it. Jesus says, if they have persecuted the master, what would they do to you? And so it gives you a realistic perspective to say, wait a minute, this is where I am, okay? I'm not trying to vimbarize those that are trying, those who want to be enemies and stuff like that. This is where I am. Speak about the situation between Jesus and Lazarus, Jesus and Lazarus. The family wants him. There is that hard connection. And even Jesus weeps because their unbelief was so strong towards unbelief. But Jesus gives them the reality of understanding before he raises Lazarus. And so that's what I love about Christianity, is that there is the reality of life now. It's not just trying to escape the problems that we are having, which is what I see from African spirituality.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So are you talking to God, right? The assurance you'll get that you're talking to God is the only communication that is to God is through the ritual, which is prayer, which is what we are taught. Now, from that, you can have assurance because you're doing something that has been done. For me personally, I'm doing something that was done in all these years by people who I was raised, people who have
From
lived the
generation
earth
to
before
generation.
me. Yeah. We know to drink water because our people drank water. So we know to pray to God because our people prayed to God. So in me following the footsteps that my people were doing it in, that's the assurance.
I have a question on that. How far, like the idea of the realistic aspect of it, how far are we supposed to trust that other people were right? Do you see? That's where my instability comes when it comes to African spirituality. I can't trust that people were always right about how they wanted to
They were
communicate.
doing things.
Like, I'll give you an example on the subject matter of who the spirit is, right? And we'll talk about this on a different topic. Stay tuned. If I am supposed to talk, or if Jesus says, I leave, but I leave you with another, speaking about the Holy Spirit, so he has given me who to communicate with, who my comforter is. He literally calls him the comforter, because you're going to have heartache. Okay, I'm not trying to make things easy for you here. You're going to have, you need a comforter. Literally, he is known as a comforter. But then note what then we do with African spirituality. We bring other people to be the ones that we talk to. So we're bringing spirits that we are now talking to. God gave us the spirit that we should know who we are talking to. So I would like to hear Mkulu's perspective on how far are we supposed to trust? 'Cause for me, I can't trust that humans were always right. So how far are we supposed to trust that they were right?
Okay. So I wanted to cross-question, but I'll answer this very simply. Between me and you, you are biblical. I am, let's say, historical, not really documented. You also have history, which is documented. In that history that is documented, it was not always right also, because these were humans. I get it.
You mean Bible?
The people in the Bible. The teachings, other people that were in the Bible.
Was not always right.
They were, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And you know this.
No, I just want to hear your point.
Yeah. So also with my people, I'm not saying they were always right. So between me and you, maybe yours you can justify because it is written. But just because I bring a piece of paper doesn't mean it's true.
Okay.
So Mkulu's analogy is that people, he suggests that people are the ones who wrote the Bible.
Yes.
And therefore, if they can error, then if you are saying his
How far should
lineage
trust?
errors, then you're basically saying that you are also, it could apply to people who he suggests wrote the Bible.
And
I think
lucky
that's
for
what
me,
it's-
those mistakes were never documented. So
Okay, I like that they are documented. I'll give you an example of a documented error that you could not fake around the Bible, which shows me the reality, that aspect of reality. I'm talking to God because of the reality of how it appears. The apostles never wrote themselves in a good light. They wrote themselves as cowards to begin with. When Jesus gets arrested, they all ran away and they left women a thingy. The first person to see Jesus come from the thingy, it's a woman. In those days, the account of a woman was not highly regarded. So what does this tell me? It tells me that they just wrote the stories the way they happened. They were not looking at, we are in this context, it's best if we say James saw him or anything. They wrote it just the way it happened. It's Mary that saw him. It's Mary that saw him. And so and not only do they write themselves as cowards, they write themselves as unbelieving. The prophecy that Jesus gives to Peter, Jesus says, Peter comes off brave. Now I'll stand with you, even all the way to the grave. And Jesus says, nah, dude, you go and deny me. And so would I write myself in that type of a light? That shows you why it's best to have the errors so that you can understand the pointing was towards God. It was never meant that we should focus on men. That's why I asked of that error. How far can I trust a human? Do you see that? Is that the Bible shows you the story of Jonah. Jonah is in the belly. Why is Jonah in the belly? Even though he knows he heard, we're talking about God. He heard from God. He has evidence. He knows this is God. He still wanted to go the opposite direction. And Jonah, even after being shown that the message that he had got was from God, Jonah still insisted on the hardness of heart. God tries to shield him after when you read the rest of the book. And that's why you see the aim was never to be focused on man. Man had showed through 4,000 years of history that we are failing. So we needed God to look up unto. So that's why personally I like Timothy, because Timothy chapter number 3 literally says, the scriptures are God breathed, meaning God took over when they were writing.
Oh, okay.
So
sorry.
could you just...
I always have this question, and it seems never to be answered. So for me, you cannot just come and say, da happened, and you write it down. And we see this mostly in most books and witches. We see this because somewhere, even in indigenous knowledge, because indigenous knowledge is this passed down, and I could literally say in Sesotho that mahlabani o tlhakana le mosadi mo tseleng ebe a re dumela kgarebe o kae. Now if you were to translate that to English, mahlabani met a woman, said hi. So in the biblical sense of things, what I'm saying is that there's always somewhere where you're going to be lost in translation and transcribing. Now, we are social and we live on it so much, but how many languages and which language? The first one was it translated from? That is always
So
my question.
you're saying that there's no running away from the errors
Yes.
that may be found in the Bible.
Yeah.
And I think from Ricky's side, I think you are saying that the objectivity of what you find in the Bible and the fact that humanity never pointed to themselves, yet pointed to the higher power in the way they speak. That's what makes or gives you that assurance.
Yes.
And you are saying that how can you then be sure? Because they can be, transliteration issues. There can be translation issues. Okay, how do you respond to that?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
I like that you said it has not been answered. And it shows human need to go through a process of learning. Can you ask that question again? There's something that you said, if you can remember the exact words.
The language, the original language
Okay, that part.
was taken from. Yeah.
That part, the language part. The Bible was written in Hebrew. The Catholics did translate it to Latin, which is the Latin Vulgate. And the Latin Vulgate was what created the division between the Protestant movement, which then led to translation. But it was clear that the ones that we had was the Hebrew and the Greek. The Greek was the New Testament. Remember, they were in the period of the Romans and so forth. So there was the influence of Greek there. But the Old Testament mainly in Hebrew and Aramaic and so forth. Now, the manuscripts that show the record of thingy, even Muhammad in 600 AD confirms were authentic. So Muhammad is an opposite person from a different faith. And remember, in textual criticism, when you're criticizing a text, that's one of the things you look for. You look for people that don't believe what you say to be in agreement, to be...
Witness.
Yes. And Bart Ehrman, a person who's a textual student, basically, he's not a Christian, but he also agrees that the text itself of the Bible is very accurate to the language. Which language? The Greek and the Hebrew that were there, that Muhammad in 600 AD confirmed. So we know that the two were authentic. Now, if you look at every Bible that came before the King James Bible, the translation is the same. And remember, these people were not from the same denomination. Now, the problem comes with the newer companies, the NIVs and the whatnots, and Spady, all these other, because they try to transliterate too much. They try to do too much. And so maybe when you say languages, that's another thing to understand, is that the key point of understanding what was the text like is King James. The King James has that the best because it doesn't deviate from what the Hebrew was. And that's what caused the Roman Catholic Church to deviate for the Protestant, because they didn't want the average man having scriptures in their hands.
Okay. So what I loved in your answer is that you mentioned the Hebrews, the
Greek,
the Catholics, the Romans, and all of that. Where are the vendors?
Remember, this is happening in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And so,
okay.
Yeah.
Reason why I'm asking, where are the vendors? Where are the Tswanas? Where are the Sutus?
Okay.
If you could just say during that time or around that time, I haven't studied history that much. Around that time, they were not alive. Maybe I would buy it. What I'm saying is that we know that our people were there during that time, right?
Okay.
So now, what this translates to me, because my people were never mentioned here, they are not even considered, right? These are scripts, manuscripts, texts to guide the grandchildren and lineage. Yeah, the Hebrews. They're the Catholic. My grandfather chose to run away from this as a Catholic because he did not believe. King James came and said, translate this, because he wanted his lineage to follow it. Are you getting what I'm saying?
So yes, are you saying that then it means that obviously language also goes with the culture and the people? Then you're saying that then it means, let's say Africans were not included in the original text. That means that they were not the audience of what was written. So basically, it's not relevant to Africanism.
Because for me, here's the thing.
There is Africa.
And there is Africa. It shows that they were in Africa. But why really in Africa?
Okay. You have the Book of Acts. Actually, not even the Book of Acts. In Genesis, we do have what? So,
Thanks.
in the book of in Genesis, literally, God did not neglect Africa. Ethiopia literally is in Genesis, in the garden. He's talked about there when he talks about the river that comes and what through Ethiopia. And so right there we do have Africa. And then even when you come to the book of Acts, you have the Ethiopian eunuch. But because we are not talked about in the thingy, let me explain that part for a second. I won't take too much time on that. Reason being, God had selected Israel to communicate who he is. And so if he had tried to, because remember he had divided all of us because we were creating problems in the Tower of Babel. It's clear that we were being destructive. So God separated us in our languages so that we can individually, deception will not spread so easily. So he brought division in languages. So the languages was never meant to isolate us, but that's what it has done. Cultures were not meant to, they were just meant so that the deception does not spread easily. God chose the Israelites. Not that he didn't want to talk about Botswana. I mean, like, that's a very...
Yeah, but if God loved us so much, why not?
Remember,
if the book is so thick,
okay,
just 20 pages.
You want one line?
I'm asking, just one line. Shaka Zulu,
inclusion.
I mean, the book is this big.
Yeah, but understand something. Maybe you'll tell me what your thoughts are on this one. God is trying to portray himself through one. Because remember, we were united, but we were creating problems. So God divides us and then describes truth through Abraham. That's why we have the whole concept of lineage and thinking. So he created a lineage out of Abraham that comes from faith. And the whole idea was that God was drawing out who identifies. So relationship. He was identifying relationship with things. So if he had tried to do that with all of us, we were being rascals by that period. So there's that.
So God is the creator of everything, and that is everything.
Everyone.
He is everything.
Yes.
And he is in everything. As I always like to refer to God, he's
In
the
everything.
parent, right? And now I always make examples of a parent. Now, if your parent decides at home, let's say I have 10 kids, I decide, as long as they're together, which is the case, I hear you on that part. The case is, when they're together, nothing is gonna ever come out that is good. Now you divide the children. You take these 3, you decide to teach them the right way, or the right ways, or how you want things to be done. How are these other ones going to feel? And what are these other ones? Probably they are rascals. Because Bapapa, they will try and find ways to come back and find the teachings of the father again. Now they find one that was maybe the smartest out of all of them, that wrote and might have missed maybe why wrote down. Then they come and learn from the manuscripts. The other one that was writing. Now remember, this one was not writing, it was not direct. Again. Now, so you hear, you write. That is what transcribing is. Again. You hear, you write. Okay, we do not have evidence that you were really listening and hearing. And also in listening, you can hear but not even hear what was meant by that. Now, these ones decide to follow that one that was not meant for them. And then,
okay, wait. That creates another thing. Because you're saying that the other one went and found his own way to describing that relationship. And so the interesting part for me is that you just described one who did find the right. And then you brought in emotions and said, but how are these other ones going to feel? Now, there's another thing that I think is quite important for us to understand. A father sometimes has to disregard how a child feels in their best interest.
Yes.
And so God acted in our best interest by, I'm going to shut you all out so that I can define this way right here. And remember, that's the story of the Bible, literally. Cain and Abel. What is the problem? Is that one had the right way and the other one had the wrong way. The other one decided, no, you can't have the right way, I'm going to kill you. Then you come to the brothers who threw their thing with their favorite jacket. What is his name? I forgot the thing. But anyways, yeah, so he was given a coat of many colors. And the others didn't like that this one was thingy. So the point of it is, even the parable that Jesus told, the prodigal son, two sons, one doesn't approve that the other one is found worthy to be in the house. So the problem is the father has to define right. So that's another thing there. He defines right. So if the father comes to us and says, okay, you guys have been out there, you've been looking, you found this, you found this, you found this. I am the God of Isaac, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's defined how you're going to find him. So he's saying, if you find me outside of this, I don't know what you're talking about. Is he wrong? Remember his father. They can kick you out of the house if you came up and said, you know what, I found my own way to describe a relationship. Doesn't the father define?
Okay.
In your view?
Well, that define. That's where the problem is. Because I know, for around that time those were happening, my people, and it always sounds as if maybe I'm a bit racist or whatever, but you need to bring it home in order for it to make sense to you. My people had their ways, which are not entirely different. I mean, there's a scripture that we can find in Kamko Hwiriwang Dilo, in our tradition and culture. For example, your Holy Communion. And no, I was raised in a church, ne?
Interesting.
They all come from
No. I was not raised in the church and left the church. I know who God is. Ne? I know very well who God is.